Hello, it's me, Dan,
And me, Alice.
and we are once again talking films. This time, Christopher Nolan. Nolan is himself a brand. Fans have come to eagerly anticipate his latest projects for his talented casts, expansive yet unobtrusive style, unique action, practical effects, and cerebral content.
I think the thing that I like most about Chris is that the films that he makes never talk down to their audience.
That's right, yeah. He deals with themes of obsession and deception and moral ambiguity, but his work is never sombre.
It's fast-paced and spectacular.
Yeah. Nolan applies serious movie sensibilities to blockbuster filmmaking. Such is the power of these movies that Inception, Dunkirk, and the Dark Knight trilogy all returned to the big screen in recent years to draw people out of quarantine and back into cinemas.
So we've re-examined his back catalogue and highlighted our favourite aspects of his films.
These films hold little regard for events occurring in the correct order, so we're not going to be chronological either. Let's kick off with Nolan's third film, Insomnia. So Al Pacino is the grizzled cop, Hilary Swank is the rookie, and Robin Williams is the murderer. Things get complicated when Finch, which is Robin Williams, witnesses Dormer, Pacino, accidentally shooting his old partner who's planning to testify against him for gaining convictions with questionable evidence.
It's so annoying when that happens.
Yeah. Unusually for Nolan, the story takes place in an isolated rural environment, which is integral for the peculiar daylight hours, the small ragtag police force, and the feeling of unease for the city cop.
Weirdly, I think that the actual insomnia in Insomnia isn't really crucial. I think the story would unfold in much the same way if he was getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah, it doesn't make much difference, does it? Nolan called Williams' performance flawless, and Finch being a mostly gentle soul played by a lovable actor does add to the grey morality of the film. There's a lot of philosophical discussion around the greater good.
The greater good.
Dormer talks of maintaining lies to keep bad people in prison. When he describes a time he planted evidence, he says the end justify the means. But then when Ellie, Swank, tries to follow suit, he knows it's a slippery slope and implores her to remain pure. I find myself on the fence with this and plenty of other times in Nolan films. I mean, you've got Batman's vigilantism and taking the blame, Cobb's crimes in Inception, and of course in the forthcoming Oppenheimer film, the creation of the bomb.
Quite a big one.
Yeah.
When we're picking our favourite bits of this film, I will not be choosing the bit where Pacino gets stuck underwater under some logs. It's about 40 seconds long, but it feels much longer.
Oh, yeah, it feels like ages.
Hate it. Him interrogating the boyfriend and best friend of the victim, both those scenes are really funny and impressive. He really gets under their skin. He is quite one note, though. I think he's an actor that you either love his shoutiness or hate it.
Yeah. I also really like the interrogation of Finch. It's tense because we know Finch could tell the cops everything at any moment. And it's sort of a battle of wills that goes one combatant's way and then the others. And then Dormer goes too far and gets the opportunity to race the police to finding the gun in an attempt to prevent Finch from framing Randy. Let's jump back to 1998's Following. Nolan's debut draws you in with an unusual premise. A young man, Jeremy Theobald, known simply as the young man in the credits, begins following people out of boredom and curiosity, then finds himself tangled in a web of criminal intrigue when he starts robbing the houses of the people he's been following. Although it was made on a shoestring, it's very clearly a Nolan film. The timeline is scrambled, the protagonist's changing haircut, clothes and bruises help us to navigate what part of the story we're seeing. The soundtrack features a ticking clock sound, and expository narration is presented over appropriate montage.
Did you know that every Christopher Nolan film features theft? I mean, I think some of the world's most celebrated directors, or auteurs, if you will, often stick to an established brand. So like Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Tim Burton, Steven Spielberg.
It works for them.
Yeah. I mean, I love that joke. Wes Anderson has made his film again.
Yeah, he did it this year again, didn't he?
He did.
But does Wes let people sit down? Because supposedly Christopher Nolan doesn't.
I think Wes encourages a lot of sitting.
Yeah. If it's quirky enough.
Yeah.
He prefers them to recline on a pastel chaise longue. Christopher Nolan, his wife Emma Thomas and their friends filmed following one day a week for a year while holding down day jobs. Look out for John Nolan, Christopher Nolan's uncle, who'll turn up again in the Dark Knight trilogy and Dunkirk. Jeremy Theobald appeared in Nolan's early short films and also returns in the Gotham Waterboard control room in Batman Begins and as a waiter in Tenet.
Ah.
Like many of the protagonists in Nolan films, Followings is a criminal. The young man is a strangely sympathetic character despite his appalling actions. I see him as an impressionable loser, kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler, except not a sociopath.
See, I wouldn't say that Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler, I wouldn't call him an impressionable loser. I would say that he's incredibly manipulative, and I agree with the sociopath aspect, but yeah, I wouldn't call him impressionable. I think he forces his will on nearly everyone he interacts with in that film.
I can't remember if it's ambiguous or if I've just misremembered. Need to watch it again.
Watch it again, it's a good film.
The young man isn't evil, he's just morally inept.
Yeah, I think that's why the twists that occur later in the film leave a bit of a sour taste. So, like, by the end, you feel angry with the characters that exploit the young man and sad for at least 3 of those characters. Not every film, obviously, needs a happy ending or should have a happy ending, although, you know, quite a lot of Nolan's endings are at least partial victories for the heroes. But I still found Following's ending a bit unsatisfying.
Agreed, yeah. My favourite scene is the young man's first break-in. All of the robberies are tense, but the first one is the best. You got Cobb, Alex Hoare.
Same name as Leonardo's character in Inception.
Yeah, a confident thief dressed like a businessman who catches the young man following him, shrewdly sizes him up and invites him to join him in a spot of burglary. Cobb and the young man stand in the hallway outside the flat trying to break in. There's no music, so we hear every little sound and whisper. This makes us conscious that someone might hear and catch them in the act. The floorboard creaks, the door hinges squeak as it opens, then the tense music begins and ceases only seconds later as Cobb slows down to casually speculate about the residents. Every instinct is telling the viewer that the burglars should hurry if they're to avoid being caught, but Cobb seems to be taking his sweet time.
It's funny that you mention the Cobb being dressed like a businessman, because I think that's another theme of Nolan films, is definitely like they dress like him, really. Like they have slicked back hair and they often wear like business attire.
Yeah.
Cobb and the young man stop for a couple of conversations in really like explicitly natural light sources.
Yeah.
Obviously at the time when he was filming this, Nolan had like not much choice about using anything other than natural light instead of studio lights. But it's something that he's continued to do in his later films, and it just adds that extra layer of realism.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cobb is explaining that he isn't interested in the financial gain. He wants to find out about people's lives and scare them into appreciating what they have. His explanation is both deplorable and insightful. He's smugly discussing the people we'll never even meet. Just as the door clicks and the tense music recommences, a couple enters, and without hesitation, Cobb begins speaking to them as if there's been a misunderstanding involving an estate agent. The robbers flee, and Cobb explains that they've succeeded because the man accompanying the flat's owner wasn't her husband. Afterwards, there's a kind of giddy joy in the way they got away with it.
Yeah. And once it's revealed that the woman being robbed was having an affair, the audience's sympathy for her could be diminished and you see that nothing expensive was taken.
Yeah, but for both the audience and the young man, this is the first step on a slippery slope. Every year, the US National Film Registry Preservation Board picks up to 25 movies of cultural, historical, or aesthetic significance to preserve. The registry includes titles like The Dark Knight, Lawrence of Arabia, Star Wars, Rear Window, The Wizard of Oz, Jurassic Park, The Godfather, along with The Bank Dick, Gerald McBoing Boing, Tarzan and His Mate, and The Nicotine Fairy, and a ridiculous amount of westerns. In 2017, 17 years after its release, Memento was inducted into the registry. I feel like Memento was Nolan setting out his stall and really arriving on the world stage. Except for a relative dearth of action, it contains all of his classic hallmarks that we've covered. Like all good stories, we constantly have unanswered questions. Memento answers one just as it raises another in each scene. And that's really hard when you're working backwards.
The time distortion, I feel like that's purposefully used to make us feel as confused as Leonard is. We wouldn't be gripped if we were always a step ahead.
I also think that a lot of people characterise Nolan as kind of slightly removed and purposefully obfuscating. But I think the narration really holds our hand and guides us through this film. In Memento, Guy Pearce is Leonard, a man with chronic short-term memory loss, searching for his wife's killer with the aid of notes, tattoos and Polaroids.
Somebody buy this guy a dictaphone.
Yeah. Leonard has a real-life condition, anterograde amnesia, which you may be familiar with as Dory has it in Finding Nemo.
Oh, just keep killing.
Neuroscientists have praised the film for its accurate depiction of amnesia, and it does make you more aware of your memory, just as Inception makes you think more about your dreams. Like Scanner Darkly, Shutter Island, or even Joker, you leave feeling weird and disoriented.
You usually, for example, have a very good episodic memory, apart from the episode in which we watched the King's speech together that you insist didn't happen.
I've never seen it.
You have!
I haven't.
You bloody have.
So we've got Leonard, who, apart from James Bond and Barack Obama, is the only guy to wear a pale suit and not look like they're presenting a weather report, going around telling everyone he meets about his memory condition. And in the worldview of the Joker from Nolan's Dark Knight, you can rely on everyone to act selfishly. Mark Boone Jr., who played the dirty cop Arnold Flass in Batman Begins, shows up as Bert, the motel employee who gets Leonard to unknowingly rent multiple rooms.
Natalie and Teddy both take advantage of him. There's no one there that looks after Leonard, that has his best interests at heart. He should really not be out on the streets killing people. Do you think we care about him because no one else does?
Yeah, I think so, because he's otherwise not very sympathetic. You know, he's arrogantly sure of his facts, and he's very cold in his actually fictional treatment of Sammy Jankis. Yeah, I think because we're with him at all times and we're exposed to a similar confusion as well, we certainly come to sympathise with him until the end. Carrie-Anne Moss is Natalie, and she suggested her Matrix co-star Joe Pantoliano for the role of Teddy. Thomas Lennon plays Sammy Jankis' doctor, and he's also Bruce Wayne's doctor in The Dark Knight Rises. Sammy Jankis is played by Stephen Tobolowsky, better known as Ned Ryerson, Bing, from another time-bending classic, Groundhog Day. For a very dark film, it's actually surprisingly comedic in places.
Yeah, like, for example, he knocks out a guy in room 9 because he reads his note about room 6 upside down.
Yeah. And he forgets he's waiting to attack Dom and just takes a shower in Dom's room. Pierce's deadpan narration is really excellent when he's like, am I chasing him? Or is he chasing me? Nolan is fascinated by deception, and we're reminded in this film that we all lie to ourselves. We decide our interpretation of the world.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like Mal lies to herself. I mean, it is because of Cobb's Inception, about her reality. And in Insomnia and The Dark Knight, they both prominently feature cover-ups in the name of justice.
Yeah. Leonard perversely utilises his condition to invent his own history and identity. Once he's killed Teddy, his status quo is definitely going to change. Be quite nice if he could reinvent himself as something new.
I don't think it will.
No.
I don't think it will change, because I think he's on this loop now. It's like a river. Like, there might be little tributaries that change, but he'll always come back to that same behaviour. He's in a loop.
Yeah, he won't have somebody directing him.
No, so it'll be more random.
But he seems to desire to always hereafter be searching for his wife's supposed killer.
That's his life's purpose, whether it's fake or not.
Yeah. So that's 3 Nolan films covered. 9 more to look into in our future instalments. TTFN. Bye.
Bye.